At 5:47 on Monday morning, your father's alarm went off. He had retired 3 days earlier. You thought he had forgotten to turn it off. He hadn't. He had been awake before it rang. He got dressed, filled the same thermos, packed the same lunch, and sat at the kitchen table. Your family saw 8 hours he had finally gotten back. He saw 8 hours with nowhere he was expected to be. Everyone had celebrated his freedom. No one had noticed the place he lost. What was he supposed to do with a day that no longer needed him? 3 months earlier, someone at the factory asked what kind of cake he wanted for his retirement party. Your father shrugged. Anything without too much frosting. He had worked there for 38 years. The factory had changed names twice. The walls had been repainted. Machines had been replaced. Supervisors had come and gone. But when something made a sound it was not supposed to make, someone still called your father. He knew which motor could wait until morning, which vibration meant a bearing was failing, which repair in the manual would work in theory but not on the floor. New employees learned quickly that asking him early saved them from asking 3 other people later. His title was maintenance supervisor, but most days his real job was knowing what to do when no one else did. At home, he complained about the hours, the alarm, the winter drive, the coffee in the break room, the meetings that should have been emails. For years, he counted the time remaining. 2 years, 11 months, 6 weeks. On the refrigerator, your mother had circled his final Friday. Everyone treated the date like the finish line. At the party, someone taped photographs to the wall. Your father beside an old machine. Your father standing with a crew that had retired years before him. Your father holding a wrench in one hand and a paper cup in the other. A younger employee gave a speech. He taught most of us how to fix things without making them worse. People left. Your father did too. They gave him a small wooden clock with a brass plate. 38 years of service. He ran his thumb across the engraving. Then he placed it back in the box. Someone asked what he would do on Monday. Sleep, he said. What about after that? Maybe I'll finally do nothing. Everyone told him he had earned it. At the end of the party, he emptied his locker. A spare shirt, a cracked coffee mug, a pair of work gloves, a photograph of you and your mother that had faded near the edges. He handed over his access badge. Then the ring of keys. One small key remained in the pocket of his jacket. He noticed it when he reached the parking lot. It belonged to an old storage cabinet that no longer existed. He could have taken it back inside. Instead, he left it in his pocket. On Saturday, the family came over. There were balloons in the dining room, a cake in the refrigerator, a card signed by people who had known him for only a few years and others who had known him for 20. Your father sat at the head of the table while everyone described the life waiting for him. Fishing, travel, sleeping late, projects around the house. Your brother gave him a new set of gardening tools. You gave him a book about scenic road trips. Your mother said she was looking forward to having him home. Your father thanked everyone. After dinner, he carried the empty plates into the kitchen. He washed each one before putting it in the dishwasher. On Sunday night, he set the alarm for 5:47. He did not tell anyone. When it rang Monday morning, he turned it off immediately. He put on the blue work shirt he had worn every Monday for years. He filled the thermos, 2 sandwiches, an apple, a small bag of chips. He zipped the lunchbox closed and placed it on the table. Then he sat down. The house was still dark. Your mother found him there 40 minutes later. You're dressed. He looked at his shirt as though he had not noticed. Habit. Go back to bed. I'm awake now. She poured herself coffee. What are you doing today? He looked toward the lunchbox. Nothing. Your mother smiled. Isn't that the point? He did not answer. At 8, he carried the lunchbox to the refrigerator. At 9, he tightened a cabinet hinge that was not loose. At 10, he reorganized the screwdrivers in the garage. At 11, he walked to the mailbox, although the mail had not arrived. At noon, he opened the lunchbox and ate one sandwich standing at the kitchen counter. The second stayed wrapped. On Tuesday, he woke at 5:47 without the alarm. On Wednesday, he wore the same work shirt again. By Thursday, your mother had moved the lunchbox from the counter because she needed the space. He placed it on top of the refrigerator. When you called that weekend, you asked how retirement felt. Fine. What have you been doing? Things. Are you enjoying the time off? He paused. It's only been a week. You told him that adjustment took time. You suggested fishing? He said the lake was crowded. You suggested the road trip book. He said the truck needed new tires. You suggested sleeping later. I'm not tired. Each answer sounded like resistance. You began to think he did not know how to relax. Your mother thought the same thing. She bought a new chair for the porch. He sat in it once. Your brother invited him to play golf. Your father said golf was 4 hours of looking for something you had hit on purpose. Everyone laughed when the story was repeated. The following week, he began repairing things no one had asked him to repair. The back gate, a shelf in the laundry room, the wheel on an old lawnmower you no longer used. When the repairs were finished, he walked through the house looking for something else. He opened drawers, closed them, checked the thermostat, stood at the kitchen window. At 9:30 every morning, he poured a second cup of coffee. That had been the first break at the factory. At noon, he still ate from the lunchbox. At 2:15, he looked at the clock. That was when the afternoon crew usually arrived. His phone remained on the table beside him. For years, it had rung when someone needed advice. Now it lit only for weather alerts, pharmacy reminders, and family messages asking whether he was enjoying himself. One Thursday, you stopped by before work. The television was on. Your father sat in the recliner, but he was not watching it. The lunchbox was on the floor beside his chair. Did you go somewhere? No. Why is that out? He looked down. I used it. For what? Lunch. You almost asked why he needed a lunchbox to eat 10 feet from the refrigerator. Instead, you picked up the remote and lowered the volume. Mom says you've been restless. She says a lot of things. She's worried. About what? That you're not adjusting. He leaned back. I'm retired. I'm not sick. I didn't say you were. You're all acting like I need to be managed. No one is trying to manage you. You brought me a book with places I'm supposed to go. It was a gift. I know. He reached for the remote. You placed it on the table between you. What do you actually want to do? Your father looked toward the garage. If I knew I'd be doing it. The answer was quieter than the conversation around it. But you did not hear it that way yet. That evening, you made a list. A walking group at the community center. A woodworking club. A volunteer garden. A beginner photography class. A fishing group that met on Wednesdays. You printed it and left it on the kitchen table the next day. Your father read every line. Then, he folded the paper once and placed it beneath the wooden retirement clock. The clock was still in its box. 2 weeks later, you drove past the factory on your way to an appointment. The morning shift had just begun. Cars were turning through the gate. Near the road, across from the employee entrance, you recognized your father's truck. It was parked beside a closed diner. You pulled in behind him. He was sitting in the driver's seat. The thermos rested in the cup holder. The lunchbox was on the passenger seat. He wore the blue work shirt. The small key from the old storage cabinet lay beside the gear shift. Your father looked through the windshield as employees crossed the parking lot. Some walked alone. Others carried coffee. One of the younger technicians hurried through the gate while fastening his jacket. Your father watched until the door closed behind him. Then he noticed your car. He did not wave. You got out and walked to the driver's side. He lowered the window. What are you doing here? Getting coffee. The diner is closed. I noticed. You looked toward the factory. Were you going inside? No. Do they know you're here? No. Dad! I said I wasn't going inside. His voice sharpened. You stepped back. For a moment, neither of you spoke. A delivery truck passed between you and the factory. Your father turned the old key between his fingers. I was nearby. You looked at the lunchbox. It was still zipped closed. You packed lunch. He placed the key in the cup holder. I forgot it was there. You both knew that was not true. But You let him keep the sentence. On the drive to your appointment, you thought about the factory, not the building. The shape it had given his day. Work had provided more than a paycheck. It had divided time into pieces. A place to arrive, a reason to prepare the night before. People who noticed whether he was late. Problems that waited for his hands. Conversations that happened without anyone scheduling them. Retirement can bring relief, freedom, and a life someone has been waiting years to begin. For many people it does, but removing work does not automatically replace the structure, connection, contribution, and identity that work once provided. Your father had not lost 8 hours of labor. He had lost the system that told him where those hours belonged. That weekend, you returned to the house. The activity list was still beneath the retirement clock. You pulled it out. I can find different options. Your father looked at the list. You already found plenty. You didn't like any of them. They're fine. Then why haven't you tried one? He folded the list along the same crease. Those are things to do. I know. And that isn't the same thing. As what? He placed the paper on the table. He did not answer. You sat across from him. Do you want to go back? Your father shook his head before you finished. No. Then why were you outside the factory? He looked toward the window. A neighbor was pushing a lawnmower across the street. I don't miss the building. He picked up the small key. I don't miss the meetings. He turned it between his fingers. I don't even miss most of the people. You waited. Your father placed the key flat against the table. I miss knowing someone would notice if I didn't show up. The kitchen became quiet. The wooden clock remained inside its box. The activity list sat between you. For the first time, you understood why neither had helped. You had been offering ways to fill his hours. He had been missing a place inside someone else's day. Not every person struggles after retirement. Some feel lighter immediately. Some already have family roles, friendships, communities, faith, or projects waiting. Some need months with no schedule at all. A quiet life is not an empty one. Being busy is not proof of value. But when someone begins disappearing inside unstructured days, another hobby may not replace what work once provided. The question is not only, what can you do? It is also, where can your experience still matter? Who will know when you arrive? What will ask something real from you without taking over your life again? You did not give your father another list. Instead, you asked what people at the factory had come to him for. He looked suspicious. You know what they came to me for? Tell me anyway. He described machines that had been repaired too many times. Young technicians who knew the software, but not the sound of a failing motor. Managers who replaced parts before checking the simplest cause. As he spoke, his hands moved across the table, measuring spaces that were not there, turning tools he was not holding. A week later, you drove with him to the local technical college. They ran evening courses in industrial maintenance. The instructor had spent years asking local companies to send experienced tradespeople as occasional mentors. Your father did not agree to teach a class. He agreed to visit one. For an hour, he said. He stayed for 2. The following Tuesday, he returned. He showed a student how to identify a worn bearing without dismantling the entire assembly. He asked another student why he had replaced a fuse before finding what caused it to fail. He did not give speeches. He did not tell stories about how things were better in his day. He stood beside the workbench and waited while the students tried. When one of them made the same mistake twice, your father moved the tool 6 inches to the left. Try it from there. The student did. It worked. Your father came home with grease on one sleeve. He placed the old key in the drawer beside his access badge. He did not throw either away. On Thursdays, he began meeting 2 former co-workers for breakfast. Some mornings he still did nothing. He sat on the porch. He watched television. He repaired things that did not urgently need repair. The new life did not have to copy the old one. It only needed enough structure to begin, enough connection to be noticed, enough contribution to feel real. On Tuesday morning, the alarm did not ring at 5:47. Your father had set it for 6:30. When you entered the kitchen, The thermos was gone, so was the lunchbox. This time, someone was expecting him.